All right, so we're on.
All right, you guys ready?
Hmm.
Yep.
Okay. We'll start with the agenda. Um, First thing, just remember the ground rules that we already established. Being patient, um, letting people know when you're finished talking. Um, the other ones stay on topic. Um, I'll be taking notes, so if we get uh, derailed or anything like that, we can come back to that. Um, but this meeting is based around three objectives: coming up with a solution to Drip and Dry's problems. We're supposed to create a plan to implement our solution and create criteria for evaluating the solution success. A recap from our last meeting, we came up with uh, two main problems, and that was limited seating, or we maxed out the building, and then the second one was patrons staying too long. Some solutions for the seating problem was, get some more seating, maybe look and see what we have for outside space, as well as maximizing our inside space, segregating the laundromat and the coffee shop, doing a happy hour to alleviate those busier times. The For the solution for people staying too long, looking into a voucher system for limiting internet usage based off of purchases. That encourages people, our patrons, to buy more products and use the service, and will help weed out the customers that are just hanging around to use the internet. So, that being said, Dan, let's start with you. And what do you propose we focus on as far as what the problem is, and what solution you'd like to pursue?
Okay, so we came up with a few problems, like you just mentioned. I would say if I had to prioritize all of the solutions and problems, the biggest problem for me would be the seating. So the patrons would need more space. So with that, I think that would be issue number one, because even if patrons were hanging out and staying long, like Lance mentioned with the stats last time, that would be still okay if there was still additional seating. I think the additional seating, as well as segregating the seating area by service, so those doing laundry might have their own section, whereas those just getting coffee would have their own. I think that would have the biggest overall effect towards what I would consider the biggest problem of just having total capacity to host as many customers as possible. So that's my original thought that I'm going to go in with.
Okay, so you'd like to pursue the seating options, maximizing our space, segregating the coffee shop and the laundromat.
Correct.
Lance, what do you think we should focus on? And what's your solution?
So I think the issue that it is encountered is that people are staying too long in the building. Um, as the graph was showing, kind of just with the surveys that they did, people are coming, they're staying on average 20 minutes to 3 hours, but the amount of purchases they're making is very small. Um, I think what we need to be focusing on is trying to make sure that people only stay, for so long, whether that's they're doing laundry or they're getting coffee, or if they're going to be staying longer, that additional purchases are being made. Therefore, your revenue income can increase, and you're not just being a bench. I mean, the coffee shop is turned into a park, more or less. Um, Solution for that is to invest some of the money that we have, to utilize kind of a timer system on the Wi-Fi that the coffee shop uh, gives to people. So whether somebody is there to get their laundry done, so we can just give them a voucher for Wi-Fi time for the amount of time that it takes to run a washer and a dryer cycle. Or if somebody's making a coffee purchase, giving them the voucher for a set amount of time. That way, if they want to stay in the coffee shop and say do business or just hang out, that's fine. They will just need to make additional purchases to continue to use the Wi-Fi that the building has offered. And so, yeah, I think that is a more reasonable thing to be doing with the amount of money that we have been budgeted to try to solve.
Okay, so you'd like to focus on the patrons that are staying too long and that are just kind of lingering. They're not continuing to make purchases. They might just be hanging out using the Wi-Fi, right?
Correct. Yes.
Okay. That's also what I'd like to focus on. I think just to kind of reiterate what you said, Lance, if people are in there, maximize how many purchases that they're making, or even just make it so they have to be more conscientious of their time. If they are going to be there and they're going to hang out, well, having a voucher system for them to use the Wi-Fi encourages them to continually make purchases. I did a little investigative work, and I looked into the voucher system, and there's several options that we could explore that are free. There's also a couple more where you could pay like a monthly subscription. We have that $38,000 to come up with a solution. I kind of like the idea of trying to roll over how many people we have in there, get new faces in there, doing that. And I think that the Wi-Fi system would be the most cost effective. So that being said, Dan, what do you think now that Lance and I have kind of given our 2 cents?
I definitely see your side of it, and I can still back that up. So for me, the issue is the seating. My original thoughts were to just add seating, but having patrons, be either pay or go, make them pay for more service and maximize that profit, or leave, would also free up the seating. So I can still get behind this.
Okay. So everybody in agreement to focus on the voucher Wi-Fi system?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Now that we have that out of the way, it comes down to structuring our PowerPoint, or how we're going to go about incorporating this. So the first criteria that we have to meet is a clear description of Drip and Dry's problem and the root causes. I think that we've covered that pretty good. Focusing on the root cause being that people show up and they stay for extended period of time, compounding the busy times and things like that. Anything else that you'd want to add to that, Dan?
Yeah, and just the customers that are staying also aren't paying, so if they were paying, it wouldn't matter if they were staying. So I would specify that as well.
Okay. What about you, Lance?
No, I don't have anything else to add to that.
Okay. Perfect. So the next thing on the agenda is a detailed solution to the problem. So, off the top of my head, a couple things that we need to address would be how long the vouchers were good for based off of the purchases that they make. And if if we're just going to say it's an hour per purchase, or if we allow like 2 hours for a laundry service. That way they can get through the wash and the dry. Lance, you mentioned time studies to figure out how long it takes to do a load of laundry. I think that's a really good idea as far as offering one voucher for the coffee shop purchases and then offering a different voucher for the laundromat services. Lance, do you want have any ideas on that? Any input?
I was thinking, so the voucher system might have issues with having different allotments of time in it. More than likely, the programs might be able to differentiate, saying if I use this kind of voucher or I use this kind of code, it gives me so much time. If I use another code, it gives me, more time or whatever. If we do run into an issue where the system is not smart enough to do that, I could see getting two separate systems, one to run for, say, laundromat customers and one to run for your coffee shop customers, and then still just run the same program on both, but the people who'll be getting on the laundromat will be getting a different set of time as opposed to the people who get onto the coffee shop Wi-Fi. But yeah, I do think doing a time study to determine exactly how much time they will be using would be beneficial.
Okay, so time studies, and then the possibility of running two separate systems based off of if we're limited to the type of voucher that we can give. Does that sound about right, Lance?
Yeah, so that's, like I said, only if the program that we end up going with doesn't support different time, then we'd end up having to use two different Wi-Fis. But if it supports two different time settings, then we can just use the one.
Okay, excellent. Dan, what do you think we need to do here?
I kind of agree with Lance that it might not be a bad idea to have two different Wi-Fis, one for laundry and one for those just drinking coffee. We do have some capital to spend on solving this problem, and that would also maybe increase kind of just their broadband connection. Additionally, if we could print off little or voucher things. We'd mentioned doing a happy hour. We could even incorporate that into the Wi-Fi. Maybe if they come in during those slower times, they get longer, longer stay or something like that. And so that kind of idea could be incorporated into things. Having the vouchers used for like that customer service aspect can help. But we would need time studies. Obviously, the for those doing laundry, they would need enough time to be on the internet while their laundry goes, and the those drinking just there to drink coffee would probably need something shorter.
Perfect. Yeah, I think that's all that I could think of.
I have one little thing to add.
Okay, Lance, go for it.
Would we be concerned at all of somebody saying coming in to do their laundry, getting a voucher, and then passing that off to somebody else? Is that a concern that we would have, or no?
I mean, yeah, if we want it to be fair, we could kind of establish some rules from the get-go. Use the honor code as much as we can. Just be upfront with our patients, upfront with our patrons, that this is a system that we're trying to use to, reduce the high traffic times. I think that we if we're going to do the two separate systems, then yeah, we'll need to figure out a way to kind of manage so that people don't abuse that system. What are your thoughts, Dan?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not certain how the software would work perfectly, but I was thinking maybe the vouchers could just have like a code or something, and it just starts a time limit. So even if they have an hour left, if they pass it off, they still kind of maybe purchase that time, and maybe it wouldn't be a big deal because they still have that time limit that'll count out by the end. So even if they're gone, it's still a finite time that they've paid for. So I don't know if it'd be a huge issue, but if we have like a system that only changes daily, then that's something maybe we should monitor.
Yeah, maybe with our system that we go for has like a look for something that has a general overview of the people that are connected to it and how long they've been connected to it, and we can manually boot people off if they, based off of their um, um, based off of their IP address or like the name of their device or something like that. And that way, if you have people, the name of a device that's been on there, or a voucher code that's been on there longer than the allotted time that they bought, we can just boot them off and you know, assign them a new voucher if they're still there or something along those lines.
That sounds like a good idea.
How's that sound, Lance?
No, sounds good. Just thought of the concern. Thought we'd address it.
Okay, cool. Thank you for that. So the next thing is addressing how we came up with this consensus. I think ultimately, Lance and I, you and I were already at a consensus for this. Dan, what ultimately made you decide to focus on the voucher system?
Well, even though I came in thinking it was more of a seating issue, the voucher system still addresses my concerns. So even though, I came in with a different idea because it addresses the root causes for what I see as the problem, I can still back it up and put my energy and time towards the system that we've come up with. So for me, that's good enough. That's a green light to go ahead, and I still believe it'll solve the problem.
Okay, excellent. Anything you want to add, Lance?
No, I think that sounds about right.
Okay, cool. Next thing come up with is timeline and resources. So resources, we'll need a voucher system or voucher software, possibly another Wi-Fi or access point, um, some way to assign either printed vouchers, some way to get that code to the patrons when they make their purchases for the service. Um, Anything else you guys can come up with?
We would just have to show the staff how to monitor the system, give them a little bit of training. We should also probably address what's coming for the customer so they're aware, so they're not caught off guard by the change.
Yeah, I like it. What do you have, Lance?
In addition with those, obviously taking a little bit of time to figure out the time frames that are required and kind of determining, how much does a purchase give you for time. So using a little bit of that along with the other options that you guys have presented.
Okay. Let's see here. So, um, yeah, Dan, I think, as far as like a rollout, I think we should definitely, get the system in place first. Get the dual Wi-Fi's, get the voucher system in place, come up with our way we're going to print off the voucher codes, train all of the customer or train all the employees, then start with the customer awareness and then have like an official rollout day. I know I kind of think maybe 3 or 4 weeks, depending on how long it takes us to get the system, to get familiar with it, to do all the training, to give our customers a fair heads up. What are you guys' thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, people typically probably do laundry weekly, so they'll give them a few chances to see what's coming before the change. I was going to say no longer than a month, but 3 or 4 weeks would work perfectly, in my opinion.
What about
I
you,
do believe
Lance?
that. I do believe that allows plenty of time to get all the other resources in place before you roll it out as well. So training of the staff, the prepping of the other materials. So I think, yeah, 3 to 4 weeks is probably about the longest that you'd want to put off doing it once the solution is moving forward.
Okay. Well, then moving on to our last action item, defining the key success metrics. How are we going to manage? How are we going to figure out if this is an effective system? How are we going to measure our success? Obviously, you can do, the total revenue, purchases that have made, the how many vouchers you're giving out for services rendered, those things. Doing a customer survey based off of, if how after a couple weeks, if their overall experience has improved. Lance, what are you thinking we should look at for key success metrics?
So that was one of the first things I thought was to redo that survey that had previously been given out. I mean, that survey gave some good insight that people were leaving before they even came into the building just because it was so busy. But then another factor that should manifest itself is there will be that increase in revenue, and potentially, you'll maintain the high amounts of uh, people that are coming in to utilize the coffee shop. And if, hopefully just continues to be as successful as it has been over the last couple months.
Okay. What about you, Dan?
Yeah, I agree with both of what you guys had to say. Obviously, we can look at the total revenue. We should see an increase if people are making purchases just to stay on the internet, or leaving and having those potential customers come in and replace them because they're kind of just circling the parking lot. But a lot of the information we used came from a survey. That survey would allow for opinions, something that isn't necessarily metric based, but we can still get the opinions of the customers, see if they still feel like we're on the right path. A lot of the customers stated that they felt like we were losing touch with what originally made us successful. We can kind of get those non-metric based information or data to help back up the decision. But I would mostly focus on the revenue to see if it's becoming more successful or not. And like Lance said earlier, we can keep doing time studies, seeing how long people are there, that type of thing.
Okay. Well, that's our last action item. Kind of just to summarize, and talk, kind of assign some work out here. I'll put the PowerPoint together based off of the notes I've taken in your guys' input. Dan, you'll get the Hangout link for us to submit, or for me to submit. Let's just do a general overview of our agenda. We set out to come up with one solution to Drip and Dry's problems, to create a plan to implement the solution, and to create criteria for evaluating the solution's success. I feel like we've met all of that with the voucher system. The 3 to 4 weeks of implementing it, and then focusing on the revenue and the customer satisfaction surveys. Dan, anything you'd like to add?
I have nothing to add at this time.
Okay. What about you, Lance?
Same. Nothing else to add to that.
Okay. Perfect. Well, do some time frame here. I'll get the PowerPoint put together tonight, and then we can get that group project submitted.
Sweet. Thanks, guys.
Yeah, I think the only
Thank
other
you.
thing for this project is the facilitator review, the page that you go through, and I think it's a self review on your facilitation. So Excellent. If that's all that we got, I kind of move to close the meeting. What do you guys think?
Agreed.
Yes.
Perfect. Well, thank you guys.
All right. Have a good night.
Yeah, you too.